You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, Anthony Leveretts here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and I am joined by Hannah Huesman, owner of Mental Sweat, and we are episode number 12 of our series. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, let's start though by, you have some big news. I saw on LinkedIn this morning, you just working with the Avalanche and have been, but sort of quietly, and now it's official. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, super grateful. I've been consulting, so mental performance consultant with the Colorado Avalanche this last year. It was my first year in hockey. I spent the last 7, 8 in professional baseball. So it was a really cool opportunity in a world that I'm not familiar with at all. And spent the year learning all about hockey and getting to know players and staff and front office and all the intricacies that come with a new sport. And it was a blast. We had so much fun, and they are so open-armed and willing to listen and wanting to learn and grow and be the best they can in all different facets. Like hopefully people listening to this podcast are. And so it's just been great. And they just offered me another contract. So getting ready for season 2.
Congratulations. That's so awesome. And I just, the more we chat, the more important this kind of stuff is to not just athletics, but having been immersed in athletics my whole life. It's so critical. And I hope people, once they dive into this series, start getting little tidbits that you can use and that are so critical to day-to-day life in both sport and out of sport. But it has been a blast doing this, and I'm super happy for you. And the Avalanche are lucky to have you. That's for sure.
Thank you. We'll say mutually lucky. How we feel very lucky to be a part of that organization because they're winners and they want to win, and it's really cool. So, and they actually have never had mental performance. They've had like little things here and there. They've had mental health stuff, and they really are trying to dot their I's and cross their T's and make sure they're giving players and staff everything they need. So I think that's just a cool reminder of like where it is in pro sports. Like it's very prominent in baseball, NHL's or NFL's getting there. They have a lot of mental health, mental performance stuff, but it's like still new, and some hockey teams don't have it. And this is the first time the Avs have really put resources into it. So it's growing, and people are realizing like we got to make sure we're doing everything we can to win, and that includes the mental side of the game.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. Well, speaking of, you've never been in hockey before, so perfect segue into being adaptable and flexible in with changing circumstances and challenges. And one of the, I think it's a huge topic for young people. And one of the things that young people can learn from sport is how to be flexible. And a term that we've used all the time in coaching is adapt or die. And I heard that as a very, very young coach. What do you think the importance of creating adaptable young people is? Like what is the outcome for young people if they become more adaptable and more flexible to the changing environment around them?
Yeah. I love this topic so much, and I'm pumped to dive into this. But I think, like, what's the saying? The exact saying, I'm going to mess it up, but it's like change is the only thing you can really count on in life. That's like always going to happen is change. Yeah. And it's kind of crazy because you're like, wait, but change is ever evolving. Like what? And so I think it's an elite level skill to be able to, go from one thing and into the next and be able to flow with it and figure it out and understand the process of that instead of being like so rigid and stuck in your ways. And the old adage, right? Like, this is how we've always done it. Like, if you say that nowadays in coaching, it's like a huge red flag. Like coaches and scouts and mentees are telling people, if you hear that, run the other direction, right? It's like there's such a balance between, yes, certain things and are in place because we know that that's correct and we need to do that. But the rest is like such flexibility, such adaptability. Like, how can you be able to look things in the face, know that it's not familiar, know that it's really scary, know that it's really uncomfortable, and still go do it anyway. And a lot of people struggle with this, whether it's a new team, a new skill you're learning, a new school, whatever it is, right? It's all so new. And I know we're going to get into it, but even in the business world, right? You go get a new job. One of the hardest things in the world is a brand new job. You walk in day one, you have no clue what the heck's going on. Even if it's the exact same job you've had for 10 years, right? Like you walk into a new clubhouse, you walk into a new office, you don't even know where the office is. You don't even know where the bathroom is, right? Like it's like everything you have to do is new. And that's so scary. And we are creatures of habits. We love to get into familiar routines, familiar spaces, familiar people. And so anytime we have to adapt or change, it's a unfamiliar, uncomfortable feeling. And I think that's why it can be a lot more scary than what it actually is. But it's really just a matter of like, okay, let's learn how do we adapt? How do we stay flexible? How do we keep an open mind? And hopefully we can dive deep into that on like what are some of the actual things we can do to do that.
I think what you just said too is so critical that there is an importance in the adult world, in the workplace. You're going to have a new job, or you're going to get a new company promotion, right? That's going to happen. And we're going to talk about that. But why this is so important, that athletics is so important for young people, is this is that proving ground, that training ground to be able to learn those skills so that when you get thrown into that at 25 years old or 35 or 45 or 50, you have that skill set to draw from. And for coaches dealing with young people in a youth sports environment, high school sports environment, college sports environment, how do you suggest coaches create a program and a plan to train this mechanism of being flexible and giving those kids that skill set?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it starts with like the way we plan things, like practice planning, lesson planning, right? Whatever it is. You create a like consistent template, maybe like we're always going to start with you go change in the locker room, you come down, you're going to stretch first, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, right? And then we're going to cool down, and then we're going to lift, whatever it is. And so I think like certain things stay the same, and that's where you can create the good habits. But then within that, there can be a lot of flexibility and stuff. And so I think it's even letting them think one thing and then changing it up on them and doing something else, like the element of surprise, seeing how they respond to it, seeing how they react. Like, how can you mix things up and give them the opportunity to handle having to adapt, right? Or handle having to be a little flexible. And you'll watch some of them will be like, okay, whatever. Some of them will be pissed. Some of them will be like, what's going on? I'm confused. And like maybe freeze, right? Because they're like, I don't understand. I thought we were doing this. I prepared for this. What do you mean? What do you mean we can't do this? And then let there be a lesson after it, right? Like almost a certain element of surprise, but then talking about the importance between that. And we talk about it a lot from a mental performance standpoint when it comes to routines, right? We want routines. We want you to get into the groove of things. Obviously, like let's say you're a starting pitcher, you have a days long routine, right? You've got maybe 5 days in between each start. So you know exactly what you're doing on each day. Great. What happens if you go all of a sudden you're a reliever now and you have minutes to do something, right? Like you don't have 5 days. Yeah, you might have 5 minutes. If you're lucky, you have 5 minutes, right? Some guys throw 3 balls and they're in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do we plan for that and have different expectations for that? And it's honestly just a matter of talking about it beforehand and then like, okay, let's go practice this. Like hopefully you have more than 5 minutes, but what if you don't? It's our like, oh shiz moment, right?
Yeah.
Like let's not panic when that happens, but like have your oh shiz plan. Hopefully you only have to use it once this year, but if you do have to use it, you're ready. Like let's go, let's do it instead of spending the 3 minutes you have in pure panic.
Yeah.
Right. Cause that's your muscles are stressed, you're tense, you're all out of whack, right? It's so discombobulated. Whereas you're like, okay, I got 3 minutes. I'm going to do 5 of these, 5 of these, 5 of those, 3 throws, and I'm good. Like that's my 5-day plan in 5 minutes. Right. And it's like things like that. And is it ideal? No. But do you have to do it? Yes. And so it's like, we're just not always in situations where it's just like the perfect ideal situation, right? Maybe it's freaking raining and you're supposed to go on a run outside. What do? Maybe you get on the treadmill. Maybe you don't do anything. Maybe you do a different workout. Maybe you do a bike ride, right? It's like, we just can't always expect it to be sunshines and rainbows, and hopefully it is. And even like if you get 80% sunshines and rainbows, awesome. But there's still 20% of the time you got to figure it out. You got to do something else. Like and I think one of the biggest ones for me on this one is like when you don't feel like doing it, that's when you really have to adapt and be flexible. Like, okay, maybe you don't feel great, so you don't want to do a 10-mile run, but can you go do 2? Right?
Yeah.
Or can you do 5 slow miles, right? It's like, how do you still get movement in, still get better that day, even if everything's gone awry or you don't feel great?
Yeah. So one of the things that were kind of real world that we would do, and it's hard to do this in youth sports,
Yeah.
but we would have practice planned for 3:00, right? But it would say whatever. And at 8 a.m., send out a text that practice got moved to 9 and see, so that they had to change. The men's program where I would do it at 1:00 in the morning. And I thought it was a great idea, but I was never going to do that to my players. So we would go from 3 to 9 a.m. But having to shift their day around a little bit and change their mindset to where I thought I had all day to get ready for practice, had all day to do this. All of a sudden now I'm first thing in the morning.
Right.
Who is this crazy person that just changed my practice on me? So being able to create some of those environments for young people. The other thing that we did was we would come to practice and we'd have our practice plan, and everybody's used to my voice, right? And I wouldn't talk. I would hand the practice plan to the players and say, here it is. This is what we're doing. You got to get through all this stuff today. So just the being able to create that dynamic that makes young people have some flexibility, change their brain from that pattern, which is so important and critical, as you said, is having those patterns and habits, but being able to create flexibility within your day, within your organization, to give them the opportunity to flex that flexibility muscle.
And it can be the smallest thing. Like that's a big thing, like moving practice. And don't worry, he's not going to do that to youth parents.
No, youth parents, don't do that. I don't, that is not a good, you're right. Thank you for saying that. You can't do that in youth sports, and you can't even really probably do it in high school sports, but just thinking outside the box of ways to create adaptability and flexibility
100%.
that aren't torturous to your kids.
But you can even do it right. And okay, I think that's a big point too, is like, we're not saying create the most hellishest drill you've ever created in life, right? We're not talking like a pain tolerance thing. We're talking just a familiarity thing. So
Yes.
even like maybe a drill where you start on the right side, start on the left side this time, right? Like, and like what? Or like if you start with your dominant hand layup, start with your non-dominant hand layups, or like just like it can be something so small as like that, or it could be maybe the water jug has Gatorade in it, right? And they're like, what? And it's like, adapt. I don't know, like figure it out. Do you like it or not? Like, I don't know, little things like that. But it's creating. You say I say chaos lightly, but it's like, we weren't expecting that. The element of surprise. How do you respond to it? But then make sure there's a conversation about, okay, look, is there ever going to be a game where something happens that you weren't ready for? Yes, every single game. Let's be honest, like every single game, maybe every period, every quarter, whatever, every half. And so it's like we have to prepare for those things. So just be ready for the unexpected things to happen, right?
What you just said so important too, and you say this all the time. We've talked about communication, but communicating, this is an opportunity to add communication into your, putting these skill sets together. This is why we just did this. This is why what we just did is so important to your development and growth, both as a player and as a person and for our team. And if you communicate those things, and those kids, they don't always have to agree with you, but they can understand where your why is coming from.
Yeah. And you can look at them and say, maybe the school over there doesn't have any change and doesn't have any chaos. And so when we come out with a new defense that they've never seen before, they're not going to be prepared. When they come out and do it to us, we're going to be like, another day, another dollar. Like, oh, they came up with something else. Let's read it, respond, react. Let's do this thing, versus like, panic. What do we do? We're done. We already lost the game, right? Before we've even stepped out there. Or maybe they have a transfer student that's 7'2", right? You're like, what? Like, it's like, you have to be prepared. And it's one of those things you don't necessarily plan for. And I think the reason it's so hard is because you can't predict exactly what's going to happen, right? We can just predict like something is going to happen, whatever it is: new defense, new player, new transfer, rain, flat tire on the way to the game, from you got moved from this position, this guy's hurt, so now you have to play the 3 instead of the 4, whatever it is, right? We don't know. we can't predict that, but you can have ways on how you want to stay adaptable and how you want to stay flexible. And that way, regardless of what's thrown at you, you know what you need to do. You
Yeah.
know the plan in place for like, oh yeah, I'm going to have my what moment. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to drink some water, and then I'm going to start planning out what this looks like. What do I have to do? How do I adapt to this? You know?
How do coaches show flexibility? I'll give you a real world of what I did forced upon me one time in a travel situation that actually ended up being so much fun and it was great for the team. But I think coaches modeling, yes, we need to be consistent. Yes, we're in charge, and yes, that we're the ones that are directing this whole flow of this orchestra of this
Right.
team, whatever the level is, from start to end. But how my uncle, or my wife's uncle, was a Navy SEAL for 27 years, and they use a term in the SEALs, Semper Gumby. In the Marines, Semper Fi, we have a plan and we are going to stick to it no matter what. We're going through that wall no matter what. The SEALs say Semper Gumby. We need to have a great plan, and then when the bullets start flying, you better be flexible or your plan goes to hell, right?
Yeah.
So how do you talk to coaches, or would you advise coaches to show flexibility, but also why that's so important for your young people to see that you're flexible as well?
Yeah, well, don't forget, they're always watching your every move. Like and like what you make important, I think we've said that before, right? What you make important, they make important. So if you're constantly early to practice, they're going to start being early to practice. If you stroll in late and casual, they're going to stroll in late and casual, right? It's like whatever you make important, they're going to make important. So if you show ways of your adaptability and your flexibility versus like maybe you come into the gym and there's another team practicing and you're supposed to have the gym all to yourself. What do? Do you turn to your team and are like, what the frick is going on here? Are you freaking kidding me? How are these people? I got to go find the AD. And like lose your
That's such a great example because it happens all the time from
all the
youth
time.
sports all the way through high school.
I can think back to my high school career that
Yes.
happening. And I can think back to my coach reacting in different ways, right? Some days it was like, are you freaking kidding me? And other days it was like, all right, guys, let's make the most of this. We got half, or let's go outside, or let's do this. And so you just have to remember that, like, regardless of how frustrating that situation is, they are watching you and they're either trying to mimic you or trying not to mimic you, right?
Yeah.
We've all had bosses where it's like, I want to do the exact opposite of what that person did. And you just want to be careful when you're trying to build a relationship and a culture. Like, how are you responding to certain things? And then when they get down on the floor and they're flustered and they're like, what the heck is going on? Right. And you're like, sounds familiar, huh? Like, I wonder where they learned that from. And the same goes for parents too, right? Like, do we adapt if we burn dinner? If practice runs late, are you like, why is this practice running late? Why are you late? Like, I didn't have any control over that, right? It's like all these little things. But I think the biggest thing for me is they're watching you. And
Yeah.
so understanding that it's not always going to be perfect. And I don't know where we like get off on this idea that like everything should always be perfect and work perfectly, just because again, maybe it's just like peace of mind. It's easy. It's just, let's go. Like, this is an unexpected thing that I had to deal with, and now I have to deal with it. And so I'm annoyed. Sure, great. But like, can we plan a little bit better? Like, okay, before, if I'm a high school basketball coach and I know that that's going to happen at least twice this year, like, because I don't know, maybe a 16-year-olds writing the gym schedule, right? It's going to happen, whatever. Like, okay, what am I going to do the minute this happens? What's our plan? Okay,
Yeah.
if this happens, we're canceling practice that day and we're going to get ice cream. I don't know, right? Like, have a plan. And so when it does, it's like, oh, I've been waiting for this to happen. Like, it's instead of just it like destroying you. And it doesn't have to be ice cream, whatever. It can be, let's go outside and do sprint work, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's like, let's just have a practice where we just talk, catch up, get a gauge of the team, temperature of the team. Like, what are we doing? Like things like that. But you just got to be prepared before it happens, which is hard because you can't exactly predict what's going to happen a lot of the times. And that's the hard part. But that can't be an excuse to not prepare for the unknowns. Well, I don't know what's going to happen, so how am I going to prepare for it? That's a cop out to me, right? That's an excuse. You don't have to know, but just how are you going to adapt? Let's say something crazy happens. Let's say you run out of gas on the way to school. How are you going to adapt? I'll never forget this. My brother, he was driving, so he was probably 16 or 17, and I was 2 years ahead of him. So I was still in high school. I think I was a senior. He was a sophomore. And he's in front of me driving on the way to school. We're coming down a hill. He calls. He's like, hey, my truck just ran out of gas. I'm about to pull over and hop in your car. And I'm like, what? Like the most casual. And we're like going downhill. So he's still moving. His truck is still moving. pulls over, grabs his backpack, hops out, locks the car, hops in my car at a red light, like didn't skip a beat. And I'm like, well, what? And of course, our dad was pissed later because he let his truck run out of gas, right? But he just hops in the car and goes. And he's like, what? I'm like, that would have been hard for me. I would have been
Yeah.
panicking. Like, I
Yeah.
should have gas yesterday. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm going to do. And instead, my brother's like, hey, you got me? I'm like, you're so lucky I'm right behind you. And like the whole car line behind us is probably people we know too. Like it wouldn't have been a big deal, but it's so like he was always so good at the natural adaptability. And he's a second born. So maybe it comes a little more natural than the firstborn who's like type A all through.
Yeah.
But it's really just a matter of learning it. And I think I learned it when I went into the baseball world because I had this beautiful idea of like what it was going to look like. And I would come up with the perfect plan and we're going to talk to him here. I'm going to have 6 one-on-ones. We're going to do all this. And then you get in and the whole schedule changes. So now you have nothing. And I remember at first being like, are you kidding? Like, what about what I had to do? What about what I had planned? But it happens so often in the professional world because there's so many moving pieces that it's just like, all right, we'll try to get it tomorrow. Like, who cares? Like it doesn't, it's probably a whole lot less of a big deal than you think it is. But yeah, like, yes, I was really excited and yes, I want to do those things, but it's okay, right? It's not the end of the world and I'll try to get it tomorrow.
Yeah. So, and I think another thing that gets lost, well, I don't know if lost is the right word, but that I think is so important for my journey as a coach, being flexible sometimes created some of the best things that we continued to do going forward. And we were playing University of Arizona, huge game for us. And we would travel the day before the game, get there early enough to go to a gym and practice, right? So get our practice in, and the next day you get to shoot around on the gym floor at wherever you're playing. And we get to this facility in Tucson, and my director of operations had booked this at a tennis club, and they were supposed to have a gym. And they walk, and it's nighttime, and we walk through the tennis club, and then we go outside, and then we walk, it feels like a mile, and it's dark, and we get out to the gym, and it's an outdoor court with 4 6-foot baskets on it.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thought I was going to lose because I was very like this is which we got 48 hours of prep time, right?
Yeah.
And we get there and everybody's looking at me like, oh, coach's head's going to explode.
Yeah.
And we don't explode, and we just have fun, and we do a slam dunk contest on these 6-foot hoops.
Love it.
Then we go back to our hotel, and in our ballroom's big enough, we tape down a court in our ballroom. Yep. And from that point, and it created this environment where I won't go through the whole thing, but we changed what we did, and it became an incredible thing for our program of how we prepared for games. Yeah. If we'd have lost our shit just because of one mistake, we would never have gotten to that really cool thing that happened for us.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. See, and so it's like, even the things that can come out of it might be better than what you were doing before. Like, that's incredible. Yeah. But that, like, come on, talk to anybody who's been in sports. Like, that happened to us in college all the time. One time our bus hit a deer. One time our bus broke down. Like, one time we went to a hotel to check in, and we were checking in the next night. And so they didn't have rooms for us that night. So we had to find another night. We ended up going to this hotel that was right next to adult entertainment, and our cards to our rooms were literally 50% off entry into the adult, and like right next to it. Like, it's like that stuff happens, right? And so it's like, for some reason, like, get out of this mindset that like everything's just going to be perfect all the time. Like, this happens, and how you adapt and your ability to adapt to certain things is just, it's crucial for your performance, right? Like how it's impacting what you're doing, but it's also like for your sanity. Like, you're going to go crazy if you feel like every single thing has to be perfect. And we get into that and we think it does. And hopefully for the most part it is, and it works out, but there are times when it doesn't, and that's okay. And it's like, just try to eliminate the shock factor. Like, shoot, okay, that's what it is. Here we go. Let's figure this out today. Yeah,
nobody wants chaos. Nobody wants disasters to happen,
but chaotic.
But they do, but it happens.
Sports are chaotic, right?
And if you can, that's why I love sports so much, right? It just teaches so many things that can translate to later on in life. Well, let's start talking about later on in life. You walk into a new workplace that you're going to be a part of. As you are identifying sort of what your plan is going to be, how do you talk to the leaders of the organization about how important it is for them to be adaptable first from the top down. And I think I know what you're going to say because you've said this a lot, but it'd be interesting to hear kind of that conversation that you have with the leaders.
Yeah, yeah. I think you have to remember what it's like to be in their shoes. First off, like you got to remember that. And even as a former athlete, like when I am talking to athletes, I like fear the day where I forget what it was like to be an athlete because I think a lot of coaches do, right? You forget what it's like to constantly be told what to do, where to show up, what to eat, all these things, right? But when I'm preparing for a presentation or a talk or a one-on-one, I'm like, if I'm on the other side of this, what am I thinking? Am I intrigued? Am I interested? Am I bored? Is this just another thing we have to do, right? How can I make it a little bit more unique? And so I think even in the business world, like you can't lose sight of when it was your first day at a company, right? Or at the company that you're now the president at, or they're the CEO at, whatever. And so you got to remember that. And then I think you just have to keep asking questions. Like, what are the most important things when we were hiring with a organization I worked with in the past, we ended up like realizing that we kind of hire people and then they just like hit the ground running. There's not really a sit down entry class of where this is. And if you have questions, go here. It's kind of like, let's go. We're in spring training. Like we got to go. Like, come on. Nobody has time to show you the ropes. You got to figure it out. And I think if you can, which sometimes it's hard in sports world, but in a business world, I think it's inexcusable to not do, but it's like, let's have some onboarding stuff, right? Like if you have questions here, but not just onboarding on your job, right? The tasks, but like chain of commands. If you have a question, here's where I would go to. If you have an issue, here's where I would go to. Here's where we start. Here's what our culture stands for. Here's how we communicate. And like all that comes down to the culture you're building and what's starting from the top down, which is hard because you can't introduce all this stuff and say all this stuff if it's not like actually happening and creating the environment you're doing. So it's one thing to talk about it, but it's a whole nother thing to have systems in place to where whatever question you have, we've got a system in place for that. It's not like very rarely should somebody say something like, we don't really have protocol for that. Like if you are a high level business running with multiple people on your team, I mean, even if it's people, 10 of you, right? It's like, it doesn't have to be 100 of you, but like, what are we doing? What systems are in place? And it should like fill in itself. It should like the next person comes in, here's what we do. The next person comes in, here's what we do. And it like you keep building it out as you continue to grow, but there's got to be systems in place and it starts from the top down.
Employees won't adapt.
Yeah.
And in this world right now, obviously it's always changing and has been, since technology came in place, but things are changing so rapidly in how work gets done, how people do their jobs, what they rely on to get their jobs done. And you've got an old curmudgeon like me in the workforce, in their 50s, that's been somewhere for a long time, and we can't get them to adapt. How do we get that person in line with being more flexible and understanding that this is how we have to do our job to be our most efficient now?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the beginning of this conversation, right? Is like, I go to like, why is it so hard for that person to want to adapt and change, right? And it's because they're comfortable, they're familiar. Maybe it's even work too. They're like, right, it's work. Have you ever heard the whole Blockbuster, like the whole thing about Blockbuster? Where you went and rented movies.
I do know. I actually rented movies from Blockbuster. So
did I.
Okay.
Did I. Like my childhood, like that was like the most fun day. You get candy, Blockbuster, right? Whatever. For those of you who don't know, maybe you listening. You would go to this place that had VHS, like old movies, and I think they eventually had DVDs, right? And you rent it, like kind of like a library, but you rent movies and you bring it home, watch it for a couple days, literally watch it as many times as you can in like 3 days, and then you take it back. Whatever.
In your VCR.
Yep, in your VCR. Now we're really talking crazy. And but anyway, from what I've heard, they were approached by like a Netflix to digitize their platform. And they were like, no, this works. Like, what are you talking about? We're successful. We're like, and they were incredibly successful in the mid to late 90s, I think, and probably even into the 2000s. And then they started getting overran, right? Netflix. Well, first off, it was that red box, right? That was like, you didn't even have to walk in a store. It was like a vending machine for DVDs. and then Netflix and Hulu, and now it's crazy.
Yeah.
And now there's like 3 left. There's 3
Yeah.
Blockbusters. It used to have like thousands of locations, I think. And so that's a perfect example of it, of not being able to adapt. But you got to think about why, right? They were so successful in their time, in their prime, that it didn't make sense in their mind to have to change, and change is scary. So they didn't. But the reality of it is, in the world we live in right now, we're constantly evolving, and for the better, right? Even though it doesn't feel. So to me, it's like if somebody's being a curmudgeon, you go and you're like, why? What's up? Let's talk through this. Like, yes, most of the stuff you're doing is successful, but do you realize you could be doing like 3 times as much as you're doing if you use this Excel worksheet instead of like wrote it by hand 24/7, and like you just have to give them grace, I think, a lot of times, and give them chances and show them easier ways and paths forward, kind of hold their hand a little bit, understand, right? The grace, the empathy part is like they've been doing this for forever and it's worked for them and they're really happy doing it that way. But if things have to change, then we got to walk through them with that, and it might take a minute. And then, I mean, the reality of it is, and we saw this in the baseball world, is when technology came into play and analytics came into play, there were a lot of old school coaches who did not adapt, and they were fired, like literally fired. They were like, if we don't value, and here's the kicker, maybe they didn't value it. And there were some older coaches who were like, I'm not really buying into this, but I'm going to listen. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to talk trash about it. I'm just going to feel it out, but I'm going to keep kind of doing it my way, but I'm like open to it a little bit. And then you have the coaches who are like, this is stupid. This is dumb. Baseball's changing. And like, so now you're like spreading it throughout other coaches and even players. So now you're influencing players that the technology that the whole baseball world is going, you're saying is stupid and ignorant. And so when you start doing stuff like that, you kind of like see your way out of the door. But it was really interesting to watch that happen. Some people adapted immediately. Some people were on the fence, and some people were like, no chance. And they kind of got pushed out. And maybe they went and found other organizations that were more like old school, like they're literally called old school organizations, which is fine. And maybe you can go find a place that's still doing that, but you got to be careful that it's like, if Blockbuster went from thousands to 3, hopefully the 3 are still hiring. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's just a reminder that things might be really familiar and comfortable. But that doesn't mean they're not changing, and we're changing, and you're different than you were 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And that's a beautiful thing, right? That there's like, if I was doing the same thing I was doing 10 years ago, I was fresh out of grad school, right? So I better not be doing the same thing I was doing 10 years ago, right? And making the same mistakes and not evolving. So it's just tough. It's unfamiliar, and people don't like uncomfortable positions. But if you're looking to be great and be the best you can, you're constantly finding those uncomfortable and unfamiliar positions. And that's what it is.
I think your baseball analogy is such a great one. Baseball is having a moment. They're having a renaissance right now. And they used to be the strictest, most regimented, old curmudgeon sport there was. And they were losing viewers. They were young people weren't playing baseball. It was, and they have embraced change at a level that the NFL will change a rule in the middle of a game sometimes, and flexible to a crazy level. But the baseball was not that way. And all of the changes that they've made, that people are watching the game again. And it is a great example of being flexible in a changing environment.
And it might keep changing, right? Like, did they swing the pendulum maybe too far? Maybe. Right now, we went from 0 analytics to like our analytics department has 30 people in it, right? Like, I don't know, maybe you can back down to 15. I don't know, right? But again, we can't predict that. And it's like, what's important now? And it's hard to argue with where we have this data that is telling us if we swing at this pitch, we have an 80% chance of not being successful. How do you argue with that?
Yeah.
Right. And like, can the human eye detect it? Sure. But maybe it takes a lot longer for the human eye to detect it, where this detected it in 2 seconds, literally 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And so it's funny I say that, because I think mental performance is the same thing, right? I think even when I talk to people who have been in the sports world for longer than I've been alive, right? 35 plus years. And they're like, we learned this on our own, right? We learned resiliency, we learned composure, we learned confidence. Like, you just figure it out. And I'm like, no doubt. Like, after a long period of time, you're going to figure things out. You're going to adapt. But what if, one, these players don't have 30 years to figure it out? What if they have 2? What if you have 2 years to go try to make it pro? And we have to teach you all those life lessons people have learned over 30 plus years in one season, in 2 seasons. And I think that's where mental performance comes in. When you really buy it and you listen to the stuff and you spend time on it, you can expedite the process of understanding yourself, having composure, emotional regulation, confidence, all the things, flexibility, adaptability, just by talking about it versus like, let yourself learn adaptability over the next 20 years. Like, you can speed up the process.
Well, and that leads me to my last question on this that you just sort of was perfect segue. I'm the employee, and my job is changing. My work life is changing. That there's this influx of technology that is making things different, and I'm struggling with that. And I know we have more episodes to go, but we've talked about a lot of different things. How do you couple some of the other skills that, let's say, that I'm not being flexible is causing me anxiety. Being flexible is making me question who I am. How do you what can you couple with that to allow yourself that grace and freedom to be a little bit more flexible and get the desired result that your boss is looking for?
Totally. So as you were saying that, 2 things come to mind. One is if I'm feeling anxious and overwhelmed and nervous or whatever about this, I'm going to start writing stuff down. I'm going to start writing stuff down instead of letting my head spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. I'm going to start journaling, like things that went well today, things that really stressed me the hell out today. Great start, right? So like you get it on paper, this, and this, and this, but also these things went well too, right? To kind of help your perspective. It's even though it feels like the walls are caving in, it's okay, right? It's okay. It might feel more worse than it does. So by writing things that go well, you're trying to balance that. But then the hope is in a couple weeks, maybe some of those things you wrote that were stressing you out are now on the positive side. Like, oh, I figured this out and I feel a better rhythm in this. And so you can watch growth happen. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is some kind of breathing or mindfulness or just quiet time with yourself, right? When you're feeling like the walls are caving in, like again, like you walk into a place and you don't even know where the bathroom is, right? That's a lot. That's overwhelming. And then you're learning a new role. You get introduced to 57 people today. You don't remember any of their names, but they all know your name because you're the only person who started. And if you're like me, you're the only female around, right? So it's like an unfair advantage. Everybody knows what my name is, but I don't know what everybody else. It's really hard, right? And so it's like, take a second, breathe, process, give yourself grace, understand it's going to take time, and remind yourself that each day is going to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Like as you're adapting and doing this, like think about anything. And then even reminiscing, going back on when have you had to be faced with different things in the past? When did you get a new job, new school, start a new team, anything like that? All of that will help you kind of remember that you've done it before, you've done it in the past, and you're going to do it again. You're just living in the uncomfortable and unfamiliar. So write stuff down, process it, and also give yourself time to just breathe, check out, and have some quiet time. Those would be the first 2 that I would think of when someone's in this position.
Well, I think it's great because I don't know if not being flexible or not being comfortable in a changing environment is where a lot of all those other stressors come from, right? So if you're not just naturally a flexible person and able to roll with the punches, being able to pull from all of these other things that we've talked about, the very simple, basic things, the breathing, the mindfulness, just give yourself a chance to write stuff, whatever that is for you to get yourself back to center so you can begin trying to be flexible again. It is that's the part of putting all of these things together that ultimately will help you with your day-to-day life.
Exactly. And on top of that, just managing expectations. Like, what did you expect to walk into this brand new situation and like be familiar and prompt? Like, it's going to be nerve wracking. It's going to be scary. It's going to be so different. And remember, our body's natural response to change is like fight or flight. Like, it's like, what's happening? Well, I don't even know what to wear. I don't know who to look at. I don't know what your name is, right? It's to be anxious and nervous. So slow down, give yourself grace, breathe, and like just remember it's going to get better every day.
Well, this is a fascinating conversation to me. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could go, but we're at our time here today. Speaking of flexible, I'm going to have to take a week away from doing this next week. I'm heading to drop my daughter off at college at the University of Utah. So we leave on Sunday for that. I'm sure that is going to be just one big giant ball of emotion for a few days, but very much looking forward to her next chapter in life.
That's
so we'll
great.
take a week break from filming these and get back to this afterwards. But Hannah, thank you so much. How do people find you as the new, well, I guess newly minted mental performance coach of the Colorado Avalanche?
Yeah. LinkedIn, Instagram, and my website is hannahhuesman.com. So check it out, drop a note, let us know that you listened to our episode.
Yeah, and if you like this, please share the episode. Please rate us, share it with a friend. Best way to spread this is to let somebody know you've listened to it. I've gotten some amazing feedback on the entire series, but a lot on this show, and it's been the feedback's been great. So if you like what we're doing, you think it's valuable, share it with a friend. And Hannah, until next time, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Good luck on the college drop off.
Thank you.